Getting kids in the outdoors. I tell you the problem with it, with someone my age talking about it, is I don't know yet. If you come and ask me in 20 years, I'll be able to tell you how much success I had getting my kids interested in the outdoors in a lifetime sense. I feel like I have had quite a bit of luck figuring it out so far. My kids are 5, 7, and 9. So my oldest boy will turn 10 this spring. So he'll be legal, at least to be mentor. He'll be old enough to hunt legally here in our home state if he's mentored. So we're excited about that. And yeah, it's been a lifelong, I shouldn't say lifelong, it's been a 10-year challenge to try to figure out the right balance. I think that a common thing that people have is especially people who, have professions, would be that you might look at this idea in America, or maybe it's probably a global idea, that you want to give your kids a better life than what you had. And I think that we measure it in different ways. You might measure it by that they have like greater access to education or nicer house or whatever, right? And it's easy to fulfill that, but in the back of your head is always like, are you giving them the lifestyle that you had on a day-to-day basis? I grew up in a very a house with I grew up in a household of very modest income, but I grew up in a rural area. We lived on a lake. We could walk out our door and go hunt squirrels. We hunted ducks a mile from our house. We trapped muskrats in our own lake. Caught snapping turtles in our own lake. So when I look at am I giving my kids a better life than I have in terms of outdoor access? It just wound up being that, quite simply, no. But I do put a lot of focus into like very targeted outdoor activities and try to really have that be a part of their life and try to establish a relationship between them and nature that'll last a long time. One last thought before we get into the questions about it is there's plenty of kids that I grew up around that had all the access that I had that sure as shit don't have a productive relationship with nature, or really any relationship with nature at all. That don't have no interest in hunting and fishing, have no sort of empathy for the natural world, understanding of it. So there's a lot more to it than just being in the right place, because I could have neighbor kids that presumably had everything that I had, but it wasn't handed to them and it wasn't packaged for them in a way that resonated with them. And so they grew up in a place with it, but it's not relevant to their lives anymore. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from looking at that and looking at what I've found so far. But I don't want to go on too long right now without getting into some questions to get a sense of kind of where you guys are at on this, and make sure I'm not getting way off of what would be most constructive to talk about.
It does look like Craig's got a question for you. He lives in Missouri, legal hunting age is 6. His son is 5 and daughter's 2. Taking his son on hunts is in quotations, on their family land. What age do you find that kids are able to enjoy and fully understand hunting?
Man, that's a great question. Everybody in every state has seen this happen, where age requirements have gotten younger and younger. You'd almost think, like, if you'd have asked people 20 years ago, do you think age requirements would get older or younger for hunting? I think most people would have guessed they'd probably get older as a form of restriction, right? That it would be like this thing that would be imposed on hunters, that you can't bring your kids out till they get older and older and older, and it would be tied into the gun control movement somehow, or they had to be 18 or something. So it's been a little bit surprising to see states move to be such a younger age. I support the move. When I was growing up, you had to be 12 to bow hunt. You had to be 14 to hunt with a firearm. I support the move that states do to mentored hunting, and leaving it up to the parents to decide, right? And putting these requirements around whatever. If your kid's hunting at 6, presumably you need to be within arm's reach of your mentor. I don't think you can send your kid out at 6 to go have at it themselves. So I support that. The broader question about what age is a kid like ready for it. Fishing, you know, I don't think it matters, man. My kids were catching fish way before they could remember. Hunting and just like the playing field is different. The minute you bring firearms into it, there's just a way in which people can make a drastic mistake that will affect them for the rest of their life. And you can exercise all manner of caution, but there's a point at which someone is so young, and man, I would almost feel like just thinking about my own kids. It's like you got to be relative to your own kids. That's really young. I feel, but it would depend on the kid. Like how well can the kid comprehend what is coming out the end of the barrel on that gun and what that can do to someone? Like, how well do they comprehend that? That would be one of the primary questions I have. I don't have, my kids have been fishing. They've been out hunting with me since way before they can remember. They've all seen stuff get killed. They take it very matter-of-factly. I don't buy the argument that people say that you're going to do like some kind of traumatic damage to kids by exposing them to, say, a deer getting shot when they're young. I was exposed to it. My kids are exposed to it. I think that if you grow up with it and it's a fact of life, it's not jarring. I think it's jarring to people who've been shielded from that reality. They didn't grow up on a ranch, and they didn't grow up on a farm. They didn't grow up in a hunting family. They grew up on sort of a Disney-fied view of wildlife and animals. And then all of a sudden they're thrust in a situation when they're 13, 14, 15, where they're confronted with death. I think that probably has the potential to have greater like psychological impact than it would be someone who's very attuned to these realities throughout their entire experience of growing up. And that seeing a deer get shot at 6 is going to somehow damage them. I don't think that that's true. Where we're at 10, it doesn't feel, 10 feels to me like pretty right on the money, but it could be a function too of the fact that that I've just lived with that reality for a long time, because I knew that at that age, if the state said 9, we would have hunted at 9. If the state said 8, to be honest with you, we would have hunted at 8. If the state said 7, maybe we would have sat it out, you know, and waited another year while still having them next to me as much as possible when out hunting. So that's a long-winded way to arrive at not an entirely definitive answer, because every kid's different, man. Every grown-up's different. Every kid's different.
Cale Arnold, I'm live in Ohio, so I know I'm the state below where you grew up, Steve.
Yep.
Our state, luckily, we don't have any restrictions with when kids can start. A little background on myself: I didn't grow up in a hunting family at all. It was a friend from school that I met in 3rd grade. Still my best friend to today, who got me into hunting. Him and his dad were instrumental in that. So I have 4 kids. My oldest is 12 and my youngest is 1. But what I have found that has been so beneficial is I started taking my son just with me. Like, we'd go bow hunting when it was warm, or we'd do something, and he would just tag along and do a minimal few hours. And he's done this since then. He's now 12. But what really helped me and with getting him in the outdoors even more was our 4-H in the state of Ohio. We have a shooting sports program.
Okay.
And the kids can start in that program at age 9 or 3rd grade. And so the amount of information that my son has learned in that program it's been a major impact, because he's done it now. He's in this will be his 3rd year of completing that program, and you know, he's done the projects. He went to state last year and was able to present, so it's been good for him. But it's also geared at getting kids in the outdoors, and that's the sole purpose. And through that same program, this Ohio Wildlife Federation does a camp every year. It's a 3-day camp. It's geared 100% for outdoors. It's a 4-year consecutive program, and it's called the Coonskin Cat Brigade. There's some information about it online, but it's awesome because it teaches the kids about this, continue on the safety. It's more than just shooting. outdoor skills, how to read a map, how to use a compass. And they put this all together. In the 4th year, they do a full competition with the kids that they have to do. They call it the Woods Walk, and they have to go through and do all these things, and they get scored. And at the end of the competition, the winner gets a muzzleloader, and they have different prizes throughout. So it's a really good camp, and it's another great way that other kids who are in the outdoors, they get to communicate, meet, and with these other kids that are in the outdoors. And for me, I'm looking forward to it because my daughter, my oldest daughter, is 9. So when I said I have 4 kids, my oldest is a 12-year-old son, and I have 3 girls. So
Yeah.
So my thing is my girls all want to do it, but that's going to be the hard part, is getting them to stick with it, because I think there is some differences. But my oldest daughter, my son shot his first deer this fall, and immediately when she saw it, she goes, I want to go hunt deer now. So I'm hoping that will help get them introduced to the outdoors. And it's figuring out now how to share my time with them, because my wife does not hunt.
Yeah, it's a good question. I have 2 boys and 1 girl, and there's always been the expectation from my wife and from me too, that we would not really change the program at all, right? Not tailor it. I think that when you look at hunting participation rates in America that are 10%, hunting participation rates are 10% female. I think there's a huge social impact to that. I don't know if we didn't have sort of, if in our society we didn't have different traditional gender roles, and there was just somehow this sort of magical equilibrium in how we instructed our children and in professional lives and in schooling, everything was equal, I'd be surprised to hear that participation would be 50-50. I think that just by looking at, indigenous cultures and hunter-gatherer cultures going back thousands of years, I think that you'd probably still find that you had a majority male hunting participation. So I don't think it'd be 50-50, but I damn sure don't think it'd be 90-10. It'd be weighted somewhere a little more equilibrium there. I got a friend that looks at hunting demographics as a historian, and he was saying that traditionally, if a woman in America hunted, she hunted because she was the firstborn, or she hunted because she had no male siblings. Where guys historically would be like, because I don't have a boy, I guess I'll have to take my daughter hunting. And that's how it went. I mean, in our culture, it's like a thing of patrilineal descent. It's true in my family. In my family, when I look out, even beyond, not in my household, but just siblings and growing up, every single man in my family at least had hunter safety and hunting. Not a single woman in my family did. That's cultural. That is not a manifestation of interest. So with that said, I do see that as much as I try to reveal things to my sons and my daughter and sort of explain them in the same way, give the same opportunities, I see that my older boy has a tremendous amount of interest in hunting and fishing, had it from day one. My daughter and my younger boy, I like to think that I put the same effort into it. It just doesn't resonate as much with the other two. I don't think you'll ever untangle what it is. There's passion within the individual, and then there's mistakes we make in how we present it and raise them. Maybe some outside person could come and watch a time lapse of my child rearing, and they'd go that's the moment where it happened. That's why he loves it, and that's why he don't, or she don't. Other than that, man, there's a huge element of rolling the dice, but just out of just total fairness, I would almost overemphasize opportunity with daughters to help make up for the fact that guys have, you know, for I don't know how long now, quite a long time, perhaps hundreds of years, the guys have basically kind of failed their daughters and how we handled it. And I don't want to take part in that. You know, I don't want to take part in that failure.
Hey, Steve, my boys are 7 and 9. They go turkey hunting with my dad and I several times a year. I worry that I sometimes focus too much on the hunt being a success. What tips do you have to make sure the experience is fun and something they will look forward to?
Man, that's a great question. It's like, it's really hard to answer because I remember one time we were getting our kid lined out for preschool somewhere, and we went to this preschool thing, and she was explaining how their philosophy was to let the kids kind of run the program. Like the kids would sort of tell the teacher what they were interested in, and that it was like a kid first, kid focused school. I remember thinking, if that's true, you guys are going to spend a hell of a lot of time studying monster trucks, because that's what he's interested in, right? And I don't know that I wanted to pay someone to talk about monster trucks with my kid at school. So you need to exert some amount of, like, you're exerting influence on it. If you went hunting or fishing with your kids and let your kids just run the program, you would never do any hunting and fishing. It's like you have an obligation to show them like what it is and what it can be. They don't know what it's like, for instance, to see a turkey head coming through the brush, gobbling into a call. Like you can explain it to them all day long, but if you had it be that they were in charge of the program, you wouldn't get 50 yards from the truck, because they would be hucking mud at each other, throwing rocks at each other, wading in the creek, getting in a fight, whatever they do, it would never like get there, and you would never enliven it. So you need to lean in their direction a bit and not burn them. Like, I'm really surprised my dad didn't burn me and my brothers out. You know, I was a very little kid. I permanently damaged my hands from freezing my hands. You know, like things like I can't, like looking back, I'm like, man, he really pushed it hard. But I think it was ultimately pretty effective. And I do lean in their direction to an extent, but I'm also pretty pushy about what it is I want to show them. Like, I want to show them that you can set out, make a goal, push through, and have success, and what success looks like in my framework. We'll see though, man. Like, it'd be better, like, I'd almost be better equipped to do this in 20 years, because maybe in 20 years, I'd be like, you know what, I screwed that up horribly. Like, none of my kids hate the outdoors. I don't think that'll happen though. But I also know that, like me, I'm like pretty goal oriented. We're taking off on Friday to hunt turkeys. So we're just, you know, I can't hunt with the guys I work with. We can't do any work right now. I mean, we're doing tons of work, but we can't go out and film because of social distancing guidelines and a directive from our governor. So my little quarantine pod is me and my family. So me and my family are going to go camp. We're still allowed to access public lands. We have unfettered outdoor recreation right now. Just keep your distance from other people. So we'll all go turkey hunting. I am not viewing this trip as a chance to go throw mud. Like, we're going turkey hunting. And that's going to cause strife. It's going to cause them to be irritated, annoyed. There will be crying, but in my view, that's what we're going to do. They'll remember, I'm telling you, if we get turkeys, they'll remember that and talk about that for years to come.
Right.
They'll always talk about it. They just don't know it. They don't know yet how much it's going to mean to them when it happens, and I will pull teeth to get there. So,
right.
But, you know, I should say, when saying all this, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, man. I think that I got friends that were raised in New York City. They live in New York City. They have wonderful kids, like just warm, engaged, funny, smart, generous, great kids who didn't do anything outside ever. It's like, this is not the only way to get there. It's just a way that I feel works. It's in line with what I like, and it's one of the ways to get there. I don't think it's the only way to get there. I always get a little nervous talking about kids because I don't want to seem as though there's some like discovery that I have or that runs in my family, and this is the only way to do it. Like I don't think that that's true, but it's got to make you raised your kids for a long time, man. They live with you for 18 years. It's like you got to make that relationship something that works for you and falls in line with your interests, because you bring a better game when it falls in line with your interests. This is going to sound crazy, I actively discourage my kids from wanting to do organized sports because I don't have anything to bring to that, but I have a lot to bring in the outdoors. And so that's where I can shine. That's where I feel good. That's where I can show them and give them an upper hand. And that's where I like to be.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So my question, for one, my he'll be 2 in June, so I've still got a while, but I got into hunting late in life, and I don't want that to be him because I'm 30 and I feel like for the last 20 years I could have been hunting this whole time. Mm-hmm. So I want to be prepared when it is time to get him in, and we're in Tennessee, so we have plenty of youth hunting opportunities. It's a great state for that. My question is, what if you had to pick, what game species should I start him with once he's of age?
If you're in Tennessee, I would start with, I would start out hunting squirrels. Okay. The reason I say that, we started out hunting squirrels. And here's the thing. I think this is the case where you live. Where I grew up, it was normally squirrel season. Where I live now, it's always squirrel season. They don't regulate squirrels.
I can look out my window and see squirrels right now.
So yeah, in Michigan, September 15th, they extended it now. Now it runs into March. It's like normally squirrel season. You're allowed 5 a day, but every state's different. Like it might be 4 a day, 5 a day, 6 a day. It runs all the time. You can learn how to shoot a shotgun. You can learn how to shoot 22. You can stalk. You can be out. You can converse. It's not high stress. And I'll tell you, all that stuff about wanting to get a big buck, which is great. My kid wants to get a big buck. He's already got in his head, like if he gets a buck, he wants to get it stuffed, right? He gets it. Like he likes big fish. He's learned that a walleye is cooler than a sucker, right? He knows he picked all this up. But out of the box, that's all learned attitudes. Those are learned attitudes and learned behaviors. If you present something like squirrel hunting to your kids as it's cool, it's a lot of fun, it's really challenging, it's a great time, they're fun to cook, you can get a lot of action, there's a lot of shooting, it's pretty chill, you can go at 10 in the morning, right? If you act like it's cool, they will accept that and they will enjoy it just as much. If you act like it's secondary, they'll recognize that it's secondary. This only lasts so long. There's a point at which, I remember my brother up in Alaska, when his daughter found out about princesses, he honestly couldn't figure out where it was that she would have heard what a princess was. He's like, I've never said it. My wife, I'd never hear the word. How did it become all of a sudden central to our existences, like princesses? There's a point at which kids just get stuff from the ether. I don't know. But when they're young, you're in the driver's seat and you tell them what's cool. And if we always presented that hunting small game was the greatest thing in the world. And for a long time, they just accepted that was a fact. And they loved it. It's just a really, really fun, good way to get out. And then, turkeys. Maybe I'm saying that because it's turkey season coming up. With the audio aspect of it, that you're hearing them and listening to them, it gives a sense of action, even when the action is far away. It could be on another property, but it gives a more constant sense of there being something on the verge of happening. If I was to say maybe one of the worst things for a young kid, talking sub 9, 5, 6, 7, would be that mid-November, sitting in a tree stand, trying to target one specific buck. That seems to me like a way to have a kid not have a lot of fun. When a deer does come, you're like, no, we're gonna let that one walk. They're not gonna be into that notion. I mean, they want to get stuff, man. But any kind of small game, any kind of action, I think is great. People talk about, oh, they'll just wind up thinking it's easy. They'll get ruined on it. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I used to take my kid out. We'd go out and fish perch on Lake Washington in Puget Sound, and we'd get 60 or 70 perch. I'm not joking. We'd get 60 or 70 perch in about 90 minutes. He can do that, or he can go sit on a boat for 12 hours, bouncing big chunks of bait for halibut. He's not like, I don't like this because this isn't fast like perch. I don't think you ruin them. I don't believe that that's really a thing. When they have something good, they get spoiled and they expect everything to be good. I think they're smart enough to figure that out. But it does keep them engaged.
So Adam just kind of asked my question, was just how to balance your drive hunting with still making it somewhat fun. An example is I actually took my 8-year-old spring bear hunting last night. And it was just, we need to sit 10 more minutes here in glass. And, 2 minutes later, he's up running down the road again. Or we need to sit here 10 more minutes in glass.
Yeah, it's a fight, man. I introduced my kid this year to, we were out at my sister-in-law's place, and there was a couple, it's not good whitetail hunt, but there's a couple whitetails around, and I introduced him to sitting in the blind. And prior to that, we kind of walked and called out there. But I was like, let's sit a blind up and sit for a couple days. And I realized it was much harder for him to sit in the blind than it was to walk and call. But the conditions were such that it was just so noisy, the crusty snow, we sat. He didn't like it, but I just didn't cave on it, man. But that's my approach, is really making them kind of toughen up and roll with what's the best way to be effective. And if they want to mess around, I let them mess around to an extent, but I try to maintain where we're here and we're trying to do something, and this is how you get it done, and this is how you do it. Because I think that in the long term, that attitude is going to serve them well just in life, to learn that, like, you leave the house to do something, that's what you do, right? And I think that there's value in that.
No, I appreciate it. He had a good time. We hiked a little bit, and he actually saw elk, and there was a couple of turkeys that were out gobbling around. But it was a struggle to get him to sit more than 10 minutes and glass off a knob. But thanks for the advice.
Oh yeah, I'll down and ditch them for a couple minutes just to give them a little scare so they learn to keep up with me better, But
Thank you.
So I just got a couple things, really. Steve, you touched upon, I want to say thank you first for having me on. You touched upon how you were kind of thrown into it, and I can compare to that. I was out with my father. That was hardcore. It was freezing, driving rain, or cold temperatures, where all the older guys are asking us why we're out and saying we're nuts when we're parked at the store getting lunch. And I was thrown into it in a bad way, I guess, but in a good way. It made me a better hunter over the years, and progressed me and made me hardcore. But I was always around it, and my dad started me off young with involving me in a lot of coyote and fox trapping, bobcat, beaver, muskrat. We're up here in Maine, and it was big when 25 years ago when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And, he was big into the fur market, so I got to see a lot of that small caliber, obviously taking out a dog in a trap with a 22 revolver or what have you. I get to see a lot of that life and death, relationship with small game before I jumped into whitetail hunting. And with that being said, my daughter is going on 3, and from day one, she's been around it. I butcher all my own stuff, and I explained to her, where the steak's coming from, where her chicken comes from, and it's actually coming from a chicken. So she has that correlation with she's eating it. I guess my question is, how over the years have you broke down that actual step of taking a life to your kids throughout the young stages?
Yeah, it's been really funny, and one of the things about it is it winds up being, sometimes seems really arbitrary, man. This almost seems like a joke, but it's dead truth. The most upset I've ever seen any of my kids about something dying You know what a sea cucumber is?
Yeah.
Okay. Cleaning sea cucumbers. One of my kids had an absolute meltdown when we were diving for sea cucumbers, and then he realized that we were going to cut the sea cucumbers up, which most people can't even identify a sea cucumber as an animal. I don't know what it was. It was just bizarre. You know, I think that it's hard to explain everything to kids. I find for me, it's hard to explain everything to kids where everything winds up making like total sense. We could be eating deer meat, okay? And sitting there like actually eating deer meat. And we could have a dead deer hanging in our garage, okay? And I could say like, we're gonna go out to the dead deer and cut meat off the dead deer and cook it. Maybe like, check, got it. They'd go do it, right? It wouldn't bother them. If we're sitting there eating that deer and they were to look out the window and see a deer, and you said something like, well, let's go shoot the deer, they'd be like, well, what are you talking about? How could you shoot that deer? It's like, it's just so inconsistent, and it's like they draw so much from the context sometimes that it's hard to even understand. In terms of that, like I used to trap fox and trap coyotes. If I was in a situation where, like, you know, when we always use the euphemism, like we would like dispatch a fox, not with a gun, but
with the shovel.
Yeah, hit it on the nose and collapse its lungs with your boot. So if I was in a situation now to go do that, if I walked up to do it, I honestly would not know. I'd be like, it's a crapshoot. I don't know how they'll respond to it. It might not matter to them at all. We snared a beaver, and in a snare, like beavers don't usually get killed in snares. So we had a beaver in a snare, and I was like, I wonder how they're going to take this. Totally matter-of-factly. And I thought this might be the end of it, you know. My wife, on the other hand, the first time she saw us kill a deer, I thought it was going to be the end of our marriage. She's like, I don't need to see you guys shoot a deer. I'm like, you'll never even see the deer. It'll be way off, and you probably won't even know it's there. But then it wound up being my brother shot one about 6 feet away. You could see its eyelashes. And I thought, man, that was a short marriage. You know, we climbed out of it, but it was like, it's shocking to her. So, you know, so after having 3 kids and one of them's 10, and I've been hunting and fishing with them since day one, I still don't know how some things will respond. We have a dog now. I got mad at that dog one day and grabbed it by the scruff of the neck and pulled it. They all about moved out of the house. So I wouldn't have imagined that like being that upsetting to them. You know? Right. There's just not a ton of consistency, man. But I think a little bit you should, if you know you're getting a lot out of your kid, you know, and they're coming in your direction pretty hard, I don't think you need to cram everything down their throat. Just you kind of go a little bit touch and go, you know. Yeah. Because now and then, like, they're whatever mood they're in or stuff, you know, I do like walk up to situations aware that it could be rugged. And you know, one time my brother had these sheep he was raising. This wasn't too long ago, and he had to kill all the sheep. And I kind of thought it out, and then I went and let my kids. I didn't tell them what was going on. I said, "Hey, you guys want to watch your program in the house?" Because I was like, man, if they see their uncle wipe out this whole pasture full of sheep, lambs, like I don't know how they're gonna view that. So maybe I chickened out when I shouldn't have, you know. But in that case, I just kind of ran at my head and decided to save that one for another year.
Yeah, I hear you. She's been around it since day one, and I know I got a little ways to go, but she seems to wrap her head around it. But like any other 3-year-old temperamental child, she has her moments. So I just kind of take it in milestones and you know, keep it around. And she's seen deer dead. I feed them out back, and I get the trail cameras going. I check them with her. That way she can keep that consistency even in the off season, and hopefully it rolls out good from here. But yeah, I was just really curious on, obviously you've had your kids around it forever.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, and I think it's funny too when you sit back and look at it, is like they got to think that we're all over the map too, you know. I mean, right. Why is it that we have this one animal that lives in our house and we'd all take a bullet for it, yet other animals, we eat them at dinner time. You know, they get that there's like a complex web of relationships going on here. You know?
Yep.
And it's not all logical, right?
Right. Alrighty. Well, thank you for your time. I'll let these other guys get in here and ask away.
Hey, Steve, huge fan of the show. Just appreciate
Thanks,
everything kind of done for the industry. And I grew up hunting, fishing, you know, small game, pheasant, things like that. And I've got a 6.5-year-old daughter. I'm getting ready to kind of introduce, you know, to the outdoors and hunting. And is there any equipment or like go-to items, must-have items that you found with your kids to bring with you to kind of, you know, keep them occupied and, you know, have fun at the same time?
Yeah, I got two for you. We do this thing, you know, Halloween when they get all that candy.
Yeah.
We do this. My wife picked this up somewhere. This thing called the Switch Witch, where they get all that candy. Then my wife will be like, "You can choose to do the Switch Witch," and the Switch Witch is where you leave out all the candy out, and the witch will leave you like something cool, and she takes the candy. So they'll get a book or whatever the hell, I don't know, something, slingshot, I don't know. Then you wind up with all that candy, and instead of the Switch Witch taking it, we just hide it. And we keep a pretty tight rein on, I mean, kind of. We try to like keep a tight rein on candy and everything in the house. But when we're out, I look at it, it's like snack time, man. It's like I bring a lot of snacks, bring drinks, and it's just like, just go, have it. You want some peanut butter crackers, have peanut butter crackers. You know, whatever. You want Nutella with apple wedges, eat it. Because it's just like when we're out, like I try to get in as many calories as I can. I'm not on a schedule, so I abandon that. And they kind of associate, like, it's a little bit bad because they can't go, you know, 5 minutes down the trail without wondering like what's up with the snack situation, because they know that it's going to be rich. But that works. It's a good compromise. It's like a deal we've struck. The other thing is there's probably the most valuable product I've come across is insulated ponchos, insulated hooded ponchos. There's a couple different manufacturers that make them, like Kafaru makes one. I can't remember the name of it. What's that, Slumberjack or something like that? Yeah, Slumberjack. I think they make one too, an insulated poncho. And I tell you, I bring those things everywhere because it's getting cold. It's just a thing that happens all the time. In the boats, whatever. Like I'm always putting that insulated poncho on them, draw the string tight on them. They can still move around under there and hang out. And it sounds like a minor thing, just a major game changer, man. And I just carry them in my backpack. And it's like they're just warm when you put it on them. And they'll fall asleep in there. It's just a really great tool. Another thing we do is, like when we're up at our fish shack, like, I mean, no joke, we'll go out for 10, 12 hours at a time. On those occurrences, I'll bring out, they have these little Kindle devices. It's like a Amazon, you know, they call them iPads, it's not an iPad. We'll bring those out. And after a long period of time, I'll let them zone on that. And that's just me because I don't want to deal with it. Like I want to stay out, but I realize it's torture to be gone that long. So I'll, like, every couple of hours, maybe I'll give them a half hour to watch a cartoon or play a game. And that buys you a lot of time. And that, I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for me because we want to stay out on the water. So, again, just another compromise. But yeah, candy, insulated ponchos, it's like must have items.
Yeah. So this is not a brand new dad. My son's 2.5 years old, and I came from completely non-hunting background. I grew up in North Dakota, moved out to the Northwest, grew up in Washington and Oregon after that, and I was obsessed with it as a kid. And the only way my dad would let me get into this was that it was like deemed as like a chore almost. Mm-hmm. So what I had to do a lot of, like, basically, I'd spend my summers in North Dakota. So everything I did throughout the year had a tally mark with it. And that was how I got my first 22. That's how I bought ammunition. That's how I did all this stuff so I could hunt prairie dogs on the farm. being a newish dad, my son's 2.5, so he's starting to do a lot, starting to help out around the house. And I pack in mules on hunts, and then I run hounds on cats up here too. So that's kind of what I like. I don't really guess I don't have a really good role model to look up to for it. And so what I've been doing with my son, I mean, my dad was a great fucking dad. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, with you.
So what I did with my son is now like he's super involved with the mules, and he's really involved with the dogs. So right now he's doing he helps me just feed him, and it's mostly him just holding the damn food dish while I scoop something in there. But it's one of those things where like teaching responsibility with it is I think what made it special to me, because there was a value, there was something you worked for. It wasn't I think like now as an adult, like I never took it for granted because I never got to go hunting with my old man, you know.
Yep, I got you.
I had to put myself there. A lot of it was my dad calling his friends to see if they had kids that would want to go hunting with me and their dad.
Really?
But so what I'm doing now is my goddaughters are getting older. They're 10 and 7 years old, and we have a lot of the squirrel season here in Oregon is pretty good. So I've been taking them out, and I'm trying to do stuff like that with them. I guess I'm just kind of curious if you think that's a good, I guess, like template to use, like keeping kids interested, but also like my big thing too is teaching. This isn't just something you get to go do. Like there's the cheapest part of hunting is the equipment and ammunition and tags. It's the time that really takes everything.
Yeah.
Realizing that, you know, I want my son to grow up like if you want to be a houndsman or dogman, this 365 days a year. You know, these things are shitting in my yard 9 months that we don't have snow on the ground or a cat season.
Yeah.
And so it's just like kind of trying to find a balance where like I'm not trying to be some draconian style leader where this is what I do so everyone does it, and you don't want to do it this way, but everyone gets punished for it. We're still damn doing it.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what your take on that approach is, kind of, where it's like teaching responsibility, and then like, you know, my son was less than a year old when he went duck hunting with me because I could put him inside my waders and I had a blind on my property.
Yeah.
So
I could picture it being I could picture the year, even though they had very different approaches, I could picture the year old man and my old man just like generationally or whatever, probably cut from the same cloth.
Oh, they Midwest Baptist.
What? Yeah, like just real school hard knock stuff. But what's interesting is that my dad, like, he really respected hunting and fishing. He respected trapping.
Yeah.
And he respected people that were good at it. So, one of the things that pushed us outside was that if you were doing those things, he never messed with you. He would not mess with you if you were doing those things.
Okay.
He caught you being a dumbass with your friends, he caught you in the house watching TV, he was going to get a legal pad out, I still have this exact, he's going to get one of these things out, and he's going to write chores on it until he hits the bottom.
Yeah.
And it was like, he'd come up like 20, he'd run out at 23, and he'd have to get creative to hit 26 chores to fill the sheet out. But if you were doing that, like in come October 15th, and then November 1, depending, like water trapping, if you had traps out, in his mind, that's where you ought to be. And you wouldn't get messed with. Once hunting season started, he never messed with you. Because, he, like I said, he respected it. I could get that too, like, especially it's coming out of the ag, where it's like this funny thing growing up, be that farmers didn't hunt, man. Like,
no,
the last thing a farmer wanted was another dead animal. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, they just didn't, they were busy. It just, they're like, that's all they're doing, man. They're out just like working the land all the time. It seemed like they had a just different attitude towards it. It was kind of like it wasn't like this sort of like noble, manly, it was kind of like frivolous seeming.
Oh,
you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, my dad killed my childhood dog and did bad night. He grew up on a dairy farm. So that wasn't it. And it was the same thing though, kind of like what you're saying, like he respected that I was interested in this, but it's something that it was of my own volition. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. So different approaches. But yeah, I don't use that, man. Probably because I'm just a little bit of product of how I grew up, and I view that the same things that I deemed a waste of time, like things my dad figured were a waste of time, I've magically come to think are a waste of time. And I don't use it as I don't use not being able to go as a punishment. Right. And I don't use being able to go as as a reward, but again, it's very personal. That's just that's my take on it. And I'm sure there's lots of other programs in ways to run it that are all equally effective. But for me, I would never, if my kid makes me mad, I would never be like, well, you can't go, because I feel like I'm screwing myself then. I'm punishing myself rather than punishing him.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was like, cause it was never a punishment for me. And that's not my plan with this raising my son. But it was like, you know, I got there and I only had 200 rounds, and I was spent all summer on a farm in North Dakota with as many prairie dogs as you could kill.
Yeah.
And you burn through those really quick. And that was, I talked to my dad, tried to convince him, like, can we just go buy ammo? I'll pay you back. And, you know, it was teaching me responsibility. And, you know, like, you know how a kid will negotiate with the world. I'll give you my birthday presents. You don't have to get me anything. So it was one of those things where it drew a hard line where I never felt like my dad was punishing me, but it was just more like, you know, this is something you want to do, and you have the power to make it happen. You know, I present you with these things, and you have the capability. Like, we can finance this, we can do all this stuff. I think it worked out good, because what it did as an adult, it turned me into the same thing, where that's how I look at it. Like, I mark down my hourly wage, like at the end of every day. It's like, well, shit, that was a couple $100. Like, you know what? I'm building up PTO. That's all September off. That's this opening week of Bobcat season off. And I think that rolled over. And so just like with me, with my son, like what I was saying, I'm with like getting him involved with the animals. Right now he's 2.5. So everything, it's this huge new world doing, like, everything I do is awesome too, you know? Yeah. He'll see me splitting wood and he wants to do it. And I wish he could. Like, that sounds awesome. But so just trying to find a balance in there where, like, I'm trying to teach him, like, this is a responsibility. This is something we have to work to do. It's not just something that's given to us. But it's still, like, for me, there's such a passion there. Have you ever heard of Two Little Savages, the book?
No.
So anyways, it's about this kid who's obsessed with Native American culture in England. And so he spends all this time, like, trying to preserve English countryside like it was Native American grounds. And it's one of those, like, as I read it as an adult, like, I started to sympathize with that, because I grew up as a kid thinking that way, but I never had these opportunities unless I did it myself. So I don't know. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that.
Sure, man. Yeah, well, good luck. I bet you just the fact that you care enough about it to have the conversation suggests to me that you're probably doing a bunch right. So
yeah, well, Lake Washington ain't that good to fish.
I just had a question. You know, with my son, he's 9 years old. I've got him my same Chipmunk 22 that I was given when I was 9 years old, starting him out with that, squirrel hunting, some of the same stuff you guys have been talking about as far as getting him into it. You know, my dad also is going to get him at 870 and just use single shot for some squirrels.
Yeah.
My one question I had, because I didn't grow up deer hunting, what's a good caliber to start out at, for a deer rifle? And I live in Pennsylvania. What caliber and then what model? Is there a good youth model out there that won't break the bank?
Yeah, that's a great question. My boy, who's turning 10, he'll start hunting this spring. I got him I'll get to the deer part of it in a minute, but I'm a big believer when it comes to shotguns. I'm a big believer in break open shotguns. For kids, just because it's real easy to tell what's going on with that thing, you know. If you ever seen anybody fiddle around with semi-autos, and, you know, even like I know people that are 40 years old that they pick up a semi-auto pistol, and I just want to tell them, set it down, walk away. It's fiddling with it. Like, how's it work and what's going on? Creates confusion. With the break open shotguns, the single or double, whatever, double barrel, over under, single barrel, I could just be like, stop, break it open, right? They know how to do it, and then I can look. I can see what's going on. Loaded, not loaded. I know it's safe. So I like that. I recently, I'm left-handed, so I had a handful of left-handed guns around. My boy's right-handed. I was recently having the caliber thing. I think you could go, he's always real concerned about recoil. I think if you'd asked him, if he understood it, he would have been like, he would have wanted a 243 because of the recoil. But it's a pretty light gun. And out here we have where I live, there's a handful of big game hunting opportunities, like, you know, some things bigger than deer too. So when I bought him a youth model rifle, I bought him one through Weatherby, but I do a lot of work with Weatherby. So I'm a horrible person to play sporting goods prices right with. But that's what I got him. But, you know, it's just like, because the job I have in the industry I'm in, I just, you know, I would have never gotten a new rifle at that age. I didn't have a new rifle. The first time I ever got a new rifle, I was well into my 30s. So he's up ahead on me at that, where he's got a new rifle now for his first year of hunting, which is ridiculous, but it's just it's the world I live in. I got him a 6.5 Creedmoor. I think another good one, like a 7mm 08, is enough gun where they can use it for quite a while. You could, you know, potentially use it for black bear, right? People like 243s for kid. I remember a guy telling me one time all about how his kid killed an elk with a 243, and then later I talked to the kid and he talked about how he shot it 9 times. So I'm like, okay, you kinda got it. Not that happens every time, but, you know, I mean, some things are just pretty light. I think that anything in that range, just judged by the kids I've been around, they put a couple jackets on and shoot a 6.5, or a couple jackets and shoot a 7mm. I don't think it's too much for them. I don't think it's too much recoil. I think taking hearing protection seriously, especially when they're starting out. I think a lot of what causes that early flinch and apprehension is just noise more than kick. I don't think they separate out the noise and the kick. It's just like, it's a lot, right? You pull the trigger and a lot happens. So put foam earpieces in them, put a headset on top of the foam earpieces, put a couple jackets on them. Their attitude toward it is way different. It's way different than no hearing protection and a t-shirt. My boy the other day, I made him shoot turkey. He was super afraid of turkey loads. Oh my gosh, you know, they're so strong. But did hearing protection. He had his winter jacket on and a hoodie underneath it. Shot a turkey load, and he was more excited about the fact that it didn't hurt than anything else. So protecting them from having that bad experience, I think, is a big part of it, because, you know, the recoil doesn't actually hurt. It's just intimidating, and they don't like it.
Well, yeah, and to your point, one of the first guns that I had was a break open 20 gauge, which wasn't bad. But of course, I wanted to have a 12 gauge like everyone else. So I got, when I was 11 or 12, got a break open 12 gauge. It kicked like a mule, and I hated it. So that's where I didn't know if anybody else, you know, I understand what you're saying about the complications, you know, with doing a semi-auto, but I didn't know about the semi-auto takes some of the kick out. I didn't know what your thoughts were about just giving the kid one shot at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't, again, man, you know, it's fine, but I have just found, but again, coming from someone who has a lot of access to, right, coming from someone who's got a lot of access to various sporting goods items, having the luxury to be able to be choosy about it, I think the break opens are just great. It's like my stress level goes down so much with the break open, where anything, I just like, okay, break it open, okay, close it, go do your thing. When he turns to talk to me, break it open. He breaks. I just always know what's going on. I never see any kind of alarming, like, them fiddling around. You know,
that Weatherby that you were talking about, that rifle,
bolt action.
Is it a bolt action?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't imagine doing anything. Our 22s we use, everything we use, all of our rifles we use bolt action rifles. Later, whatever the hell they want to use is fine, but it's just like, again,
I got you.
And then I'll tell you another thing. My 22, I have a CZ 22 we like to use. I got a couple of 22s. You can buy, you know, the magazines. You can buy a single shot magazine, because if you pull the magazine out, you got that hole in the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these guys with like CNC printers, those things, they make now. It's like it's a plug for the magazine, and it turns a magazine fed 22 into a single shot. So even though we have bolt action magazine fed 22s, I just put those things in them, and we just run them like single shots. And then again, just takes out the guesswork. When that thing goes off, I know it's empty.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Steve, thanks. You know, we're big fans, and I learned to hunt in my 40s when my kids were, you know, probably 6 and 9 was when I really got into it. And my oldest, my son, is 16, and he'll go out in the woods, but you know, it's not his thing. It turns out my daughter, who's just about to turn 13, she just can't wait to go out in the woods. And the advice I'd gotten from one of my mentors early on was, you know, don't force the kids. Wait until they ask, and then show them a good time, and then bring them home before they get bored, so they're begging to stay. And you know, that's kind of how I've done it. But with my daughter, you know, now that she's becoming a teenager, she's noting that you know, this isn't really a girl's thing. You know, it's the guys at school that are talking about hunting. And, you know, it's been nice. You know, you've had a couple of episodes on your show introducing women to hunting, and you know, and those were important in some of our discussions at home. You know, that, you know, hey, you know, there are women that hunt and enjoy it. But, you know, my question to you is, you know, being in the industry and your role in the media, you know, who are some of the female role models that are out there that you think you share similar values with? Because you know, one of the reasons we like your show is, you know, I think you represent a whole set of values that I don't generally see in hunting media. But it's even more difficult, in my opinion, to find female role models that my daughter I think will respond to. So
yeah, I don't like. It's hard for me to say like in media, because I don't know. You know, I think a lot of them in life. I'd almost ask Bridget to help out with that, because it's hard for me to think of it in terms of like how to illustrate to them media representations. My wife really enjoys and has a lot of appreciation for Eva Shockey, right? Like, likes her message, likes how she handles the question of women in the outdoors, and has like an enthusiasm for it. And then obviously she's like a really credentialed person, right? Like, has lived that lifestyle for a long time. But I'd be a little bit, you know, I'm glad that people like the show, and I'm glad you enjoy the show, but it feels to me like I'd be a little bit uneasy advising it that way and putting it in terms of media personalities. One of the most impactful people, like my daughter, who I'd very much like to hunt and seems to enjoy it, one of the most impactful people in her life is her aunt, right, who runs a ranch. And my daughter wants to go work for her aunt who runs a ranch. And so that, like, kind of like that one-on-one thing is super important to her. Bridget, maybe Bridget can point out some like media. When I'm talking about that,
yeah,
you're talking about more than a social media account. You're talking about like shows.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Any ideas, Bridget?
And in fact, if anything, you know, literature as well. You know, my daughter's a big reader, so yeah, I shouldn't have used the term media, but just you know, role models out there that she could be exposed to.
I think it's interesting. I would just interject that I've found a lot of mentors, female mentors, in conservation groups. And are hunters and maybe don't have a huge media following, but are extremely well spoken and well written. And I've learned a lot. You know, if you look from even like a small group through NWF Artemis, you'll find a big group of females that I think would be great to point to as far as role models. You know, maybe not on a TV show, but definitely somebody you could trust to, you know, teach your children ethics, if nothing else.
Yeah. We have someone we work with, one of my colleagues, Danielle Pruitt, is, you know, a woman hunter, which is great, but I don't know that, you know, she deals a lot in food and wild game, and I don't know that would be something that would resonate with younger generation, or you know, I don't know that would be something that would resonate with kids. It's a great question, man. It's like to be honest with you, it's kind of stumping me. We just read with my boy. We just read Hatchet. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hatchet, but it's a good book, and it's about a little boy, and my daughter really enjoyed it. Like, she really enjoyed Hatchet. But yeah, it's interesting to think about it's interesting to think about when I view it that way. Yeah, it's so it's really male dominated, even from the books we grew up reading. Light in the Forest, it's about two boys. Tom, you know, Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, Hatchet. I mean, all like the real standards. Right now we're reading Call of the Wild, right? Jack London's Call of the Wild, and even the damn dog's a boy. Yeah, it's tough. I hadn't really thought about how tough.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, sorry to be so stumped by it, man. I feel like I failed you.
So Omar, I'll check out Kelsey Johnson and April Vokey, right? So that, you know, April's more on the fishing side and Kelsey's more an artist, but they've both got their own ways of interacting with the native world, and I think that's the message that matters for me. So Steve, I guess it's pretty consistent with what a lot of the folks have been asking, which is, you know, just finding that balance, right? Like, we took Elijah out like for a bow hunt. Like, he was really interested. I was going out for this dinner was hunting, so he wanted to come out. So we went out to a guy's ranch about 45 minutes from town, private land, super safe, did bow hunting, you know. So he was like super excited. We went out there Thursday after kindergarten or whatever. And, you know, bunch of snow, 10-minute walk up to the glassing knob, wait there. 5 minutes later, you know, he's pretty bored of glassing. So he's like, hey, call up the elk. So I do like an elk bugle, and he's like, yeah, where are they? You know, they didn't come out. And he's like, no, there can't be any. Like, do a deer call. So you do a deer call. And he's like, yeah, okay, well, time to get going home now, right? So, you know, and like we stretched it out and had like a really good hour up there of like doing some calling, doing some glassing, like, you know, shooting a bow against a tree, etc. But like, you know, we probably spent more time driving and less time just being out there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what was cool then was like we came home, and then, you know, I was down in the basement putting some gear away, and I heard Kate chatting with Elijah, and he's like, hey, you know, hunting's really, really good. I really like it, but it's pretty boring. So I think I'll like it a lot more when I'm at it. And I was like, you know, well, like, good that he finished on a high, right? You know,
well, I think there's something valuable in that. The worst thing would be that you come home and then you can't get him to go back out again.
Totally, right? So yeah, it's like, yeah, and particularly with him, like he's not like a charge at him kind of boy. Like, yeah, if I burned him, like, he'd be burned for life, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably like a great way to measure the battles and not the war, right? The war, I imagine, like, winning the war would be that they grow up, and when they're on their own, they have like a productive, informative relationship without the outdoors, and they're a good environmental steward, right? That's the win, right? That's the war. Yeah. A good way to look at the battle, I mean, as we're having this conversation, a good way to look at each battle would be like, will they go back out again? You know? And they got short memories, man. We went out, I took my kids out just to kind of to conclude here. I got to jump off because I got to do something. I was supposed to do something at 7. Kind of a funny thing about their mindset is we were going out to set beaver traps a couple weekends going on Saturday. Like, everybody's excited on Friday. Saturday, whatever the hell happened, I don't know, they got distracted. No one wanted to go. Worst thing that ever happened to them. So we go, time of their life. They come back and they're on fire, like, so excited. Can't wait to go check them. Wake up Sunday morning, no way would I want to go back out there. We take them out, time of their life. Greatest thing that ever happened to them. So you're watching people like go through these massive attitude changes, sort of like by the minute, you know? And so again, man, I hesitate to really give them the reins too much. a little bit unpredictable. But you know, I mentioned earlier, and I'll say it again, I find, you know, with parents I'm around, I think that a lot of the successful ones are the ones that care enough to ask questions, care enough to show up for something like this, right? It's like, if you got that going, you're probably doing a bunch of stuff right. It's the people that just don't care, and kids that got to grow up knowing no one cares about them. That's the problem. Like, that's the real deep problem, I think.
Mm.
It's just when you got parents who are just ambivalent. So if you're asking questions and thinking about it and making a plan and making adjustments, you're probably 99% there, would be my guess. With that, guys, I got to scoot. All right, guys, thanks a lot.